Real stories improve English fluency, and I have a story from my life about a flashlight to share with you. Welcome to English Coach 3Ts. I'm teacher Tanya, and I'm excited to share with you another way that you can work with me to learn English and become fluent faster. My new We Speak Fluency program is for men and women who already have an intermediate level of English and want to become more fluent. In this program, you're going to have more videos, a private podcast, lots of information and materials to help you so that you can practice to become more fluent faster. You're also going to have conversation groups so you don't have to look for anyone to talk to again, and you can get your questions answered by me. If you'd like to have more information about my We Speaks Fluency program, and you'd like to know how you can save 50% off of your first month, click on the link in the description below and I'll send you the information you need. If you're already a part of my free More English Club, then you will get the information in your email. So let's get started with this story. Recently, I was talking to the ladies in our She Speaks Fluency group, and we were talking about what we call this in the United States, which is flashlight. But if you learn British English or you've heard British English, then you may hear this called a torch, which can be kind of confusing because if you say that this is a torch without holding it up like I am now, here in the United States, people will think of something completely different. A torch is something that has an actual fire on it. You may have seen them hold a torch in the Olympic Games where they pass an actual torch with fire from one player to another player. But if you want to talk about a flashlight that has a battery and you can turn on and off electrically, this is what we're talking about in the United States. When I started thinking of stories that I might have with a flashlight, of course I thought of lots of different stories, and I didn't really want to talk about just an everyday story, which I'll tell you here in a second, but rather tell you something that is a little more interesting so that you can remember this vocabulary word and others. So the story I have to tell you today is about a cave. A cave can be like a hole in the ground that goes back into the earth. Sometimes you'll find animals living in caves or lots of different things. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. But I am going to tell you my everyday story just because this is going to help you be more fluent by remembering this vocabulary. Repetition is such an important part of learning a new language, but you don't want to do the type of repetition you do with a vocabulary list or something like that. That's why I give you other ideas on how you can repeat the words that you're hearing here in my free More English Club, which is linked below, where you can get a practice plan for this video and some of the more recent videos. So the everyday story is that I use this flashlight almost every day, probably every day, especially in the winter when it's very dark outside and I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and I turn off the lights and it is pitch black in my house. Pitch black meaning that it is totally dark. There's no light in my house. So I turn on the flashlight before I get into bed and stand it on my nightstand. A nightstand is the table next to your bed where you might put your cell phone or a drink of water. For me, I like to put my glasses there. And I stand this flashlight there so I have a little light to get into bed. Yes, lots of nightstands often have a lamp on them already. We wouldn't call this a lamp, even though it has a light. A lamp is a light that you'll see on a table or sitting on something else in your house that you can turn on right there and not at a light switch on the wall. The lamp on my nightstand has not been working for a while, and instead of fixing it, I've been using this flashlight. But let me tell you another story that's probably a little more interesting so that you can remember these two vocabulary words I've already shared with you: flashlight and pitch black or pitch dark. Several years ago, my girls and I, Tanya and Tanya, went to some lava tubes up in northern Arizona. Before this time, I had never even heard of a lava tube. A lava tube is where the lava, which is what comes out of a volcano when it erupts or explodes, the lava flows down and it creates these tubes underneath the ground. And sometimes you can go down into these tubes in the ground. They're a lot like a cave. And you've probably heard me talk a little bit about caves before, so I'll link those stories below. But in this particular case, the girls and I were going to go with a group of other homeschoolers into these lava tubes to learn about the natural parts and the science and things like that. And they told us to bring a very good flashlight, because once you get down inside these tubes that are kind of like going down a tunnel in the earth, it gets very dark, pitch black. You cannot see. In fact, they told us you will not be able to see your hand in front of your face. And I was like, wow, that is really, really dark. So we brought some good flashlights with us, and we went down with a guide. It was, I think, during a science event in that area. And this man told us about some of the different scientific names inside this cave, but he also had fun things to share with us. And the one that I remember most is about some lifesaver mints. So some of the people went and bought these lifesaver mints. I'm going to hold it up here so you can see it. You may have heard of lifesavers. They're a very common American candy. And this particular flavor is called wintergreen, more well known as wintergreen. But Lifesavers likes to call everything O, like wintergreen, because a lifesaver mint is in the shape of an O. So wintergreen or wintergreen is not a flavor that I like. So I didn't buy the mints for this experiment that they would do down in these lava tubes. By the way, this is kind of like a tube. This is a cylinder. This is a cylinder. This is a cylindrical shape, and this is a cylinder. And if they were empty in the middle, like this one is, then there's a tube in there, like the lava tubes. All right, so anyway, they told us if we would bring, specifically, it had to be Lifesaver wintergreen mints. When we got down into the lava tubes so far that it was so pitch black, so pitch dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, we would all turn off our flashlights so that you could bite down on one of these mints. Do you have any idea why? I would have never guessed this, but I'm going to show you bite down with these mints that I like better. And no, none of these mints are paying me to make this video, but I like Mentos and I don't like Lifesaver mints. These are Mentos, I think they're peppermint flavored. It just says naturally flavored. They're chewy. Do you know the word chewy. Chewy is when, kind of like chewing gum where you chew and chew. This mint is not chewy. If you bite down on the wintergreen Lifesaver mint, it will break apart. So this is bite down. These mints are hard. It's hard to bite down. This is bite down on the mint. I'm going to put this mint, I'm going to put this mint in my cheek and let it warm up so that it can be chewy like it's supposed to be. Now that this mint has been in my mouth a little while and it's warmed up, it's become more chewy, like it says on the package. Pardon me. And it's stuck to my teeth. It's on my teeth and it won't come off. It's stuck to my teeth. Okay, so give me a second here. Okay, I've mostly chewed up that mint. I've chewed it enough that it's gone. So have you ever done an experiment like this with mints? And do you even, I think you might have seen Lifesaver mints in other countries, and I don't know, this one hasn't been around for so long. In other words, these have been around for as long as I can remember. These were newer when I was like in college. I like these better. But have you ever done an experiment with either of these types of mints in the pitch dark? I will say that these mints, you may have seen an experiment done with these mints, and I'm going to talk about that in another video. But with the Lifesaver wintergreen in the cave, people would put these in their mouth and bite down with their mouth open. Here's a little cultural note. In the United States, and I think in many countries, it is really rude to eat something with your mouth open like that. It's considered rude. But for this experiment, we all turned off our flashlights. The people who had them put these in their mouth and they would bite down. Now, when they bit down, past tense, when they bit down on these mints, you could see sparks coming out of their mouth. A spark is like a little teeny bit of light coming out of their mouth. It was so amazing. They said this is what would happen, but I didn't really believe it until I saw it with my own two eyes. This is a really common phrase we use when we say, I don't think I can believe that unless I see it with my own two eyes, or I'd have to see it to believe it, or it's true, I saw it with my own two eyes. And this was a really cool way for the kids that were there, the homeschooling kids that were there, to learn some science, which I forgot, but that's okay. It was a cool way for the kids to have an experience of seeing something like this. So I'm curious if you've ever done something like this with the wintergreen mints. So there's a little more to this story to help you remember the word flashlight, because as we were coming out of the cave, there were several college students, maybe about 19, 20 years old, going down into the cave without a flashlight. This area in northern Arizona has a university, so there's a lot of college kids there, and they had heard about the lava tubes and they wanted to check out the cave, and they were told to bring a flashlight, and they brought their phone with a flashlight on it, which is not the same as this flashlight. Yes, the light that comes from your phone when you turn on the flashlight, we call that a flashlight. But this light is nowhere near as powerful as this light. And you don't want to have your phone out while you're walking through and crawling through these lava tubes, because it's very rocky inside there. It's not like walking on a path or a sidewalk. Instead, you're constantly crawling over things, walking on rocks. Your balance is not real great, and it would be really easy to either lose your phone or maybe break it or something. So we told them they needed to go get an actual flashlight to use down in the lava tubes. And I don't know if they actually did it, but I have always thought, I really hope they didn't ruin or lose their phones. And it's funny how when there's things like this, that your brain will remember it more because it's out of the ordinary. It's not common. It's not something you usually see. And this is also true for learning English. If you hear real stories, stories that someone else is telling you, like this one, you're more likely to remember the vocabulary because it's something different than you hear all the time. But you also don't want it to be so different that you can't even understand it, because you want to understand as much of the story as possible. If you understand 95% or more of this story, this is a great way to remember the new vocabulary that you're learning, even if it's not like, oh, I remember it right now. Instead, it's a great way to sort of introduce this vocabulary to your brain so that the next time it hears these words, your brain is like, ooh, I remembered a story and I can't quite remember that word, but I know that it was something that I heard Tanya talk about. And then the next time you hear the word pitch dark, you're like, oh, I've heard that word before. Even if you don't remember exactly where you heard it or exactly what it means, now your brain is remembering and having that repetition. Today in this story, I've said the word pitch dark and pitch black and flashlight and flashlight on your phone several times so that you will remember them, even if it's a word you previously remembered. This will help you to learn and remember more vocabulary that's different in the future. So speaking about that, I know you want to keep learning more, so I recommend this story next, and I'll see you there.